As an artist, S H Raza was characterized by self-reflection, constant restless experimentation, and was always guided by an innate sense of poetry of form and color. A chance meeting with Henri Cartier-Bresson in Kashmir in 1948 went on to completely reshape the direction of Raza's career. On his advice, Raza moved to France in 1950 and began studying pictorial construction through the works of Cézanne and other Western artists. This would go on to influence much of his work of the 1950s, including this painting that you see behind me. In Paris, Raza steeped himself in French cultural life, and then eventually went on to travel to Provence and the Maritime Alps. This canvas in particular, painted in 1957, comes from this pivotal period in his artistic career, where the provincial French landscape took center stage in his art for almost 2 decades. His newly gained licence plastique gave rise to increasingly cubist compositions, and the churches, the towers, the village homes of the French countryside began populating his canvas in carefully assembled flattened forms. This work stands as a fine example of what art critic Yashodhara Dalmia calls the epiphanic orchestrations of tones and shapes of Raza's 1950s landscapes. Around the same time, such works foreshadow Raza's eventual move towards his gestural works. The solid forms of Raza's early French landscapes are caught in the process of gradually dissolving in intimation of this imminent gestural phase which followed in the 1960s. He layers paint onto the canvas in deliberate strokes with their textural heft, playing up their intensity. These areas of planar density vibrate with energy, breaking up the composition to give simultaneous aerial and frontal views of the landscape. These blazing yellows, reds, oranges, greens, and intense browns are reminiscent of Rajput and Pahari miniatures. The fields of intense color create almost a fevered tonal pitch. They marry the drama of the Rajput and Pahari palettes to the formal construction of Western art through studious attention to the techniques of both schools. It was this triumphant handling of paint, this living in paint, that art critic Rudy von Leyden termed an act of love by the artist. The abstract expressionism that dominated Raza's works in the 1960s gave way to a pivotal shift in the 1970s. After having spent nearly 4 decades in France, Raza began visiting India frequently during the 1970s and 80s. And he often said this was a period of artistic rebirth for him. As Raza traveled across his home state of Madhya Pradesh, he began questioning his own Indian identity and felt compelled to return to his roots. While in Bhopal, Raza discovered the poetry of Gajanan Madhav Muktibodh, among other poets, which lent a distinct association of Indian spiritual thought to his paintings. Raza's pursuit of what he termed a pictorial logic of form deepened, and he integrated his expressionist techniques into a purely geometric abstraction during the 1980s. He began to view nature as an integral force of life, one not to merely be observed, but whose essence he tried to distill through the act of putting paint on canvas. Raza united his holistic perception of nature with a pure plastic ordering of form. Nature, and by extension the universe, was pared down to its most essential elements. This work, titled The Earth, was painted in 1986. It is the work of this new phase during which geometric forms like the point or the bindu, the square, and the triangle, in the artist's words, opened up a whole new vocabulary which corresponded in a sense to my training in Paris in formalism. The horizontal and diagonal lines here charge the canvas with energy and dissect it into triangles which are further contained within concentric squares. The triangles are commonly understood in Indian thought to represent Purush and Prakriti, or the male and female energies that combine to create life. At the top of the canvas is a bindu, or black circle, which in Indian metaphysics denotes shunya, or a void, representing immense potent energy. And it became the central element of his work from the late 1970s onwards. In this painting, the Bindu is inscribed with a downturned triangle mirrored by an upright one, alluding to its symbolism as the bija, or the source of life arising from the merging of female and male energies. Raza's use of color, the ochre, orange, deep green, and midnight blue here, recall memories of his childhood, the richness of the earth of Madhya Pradesh, and the changing colors of its dense forests as the day turned into night. The act of painting was spiritual for Raza. It was a ritualistic process which produced art that, in the words of critic Ashok Vajpayee, raised the material world to the level of a cosmos, so that the two realms are united on equal footing. Bid on these lots by Raza and other works by modern Indian artists at our flagship evening sale in New Delhi on September 14th, 2024.